I'm speaking. Neat. You good? Is it running? Then you can begin, because I'm done.
Hey, I'm Paulson McIntyre. I'm a lead site reliability engineer with Salesforce. Been with the company for about 6 years.
And I am Ben Gray, also known as Epically Fail on Twitch. I have been with Salesforce for 9 years. I am an SMTS, and I am very excited to be here and talking to all of you folks about Fragforce, specifically about how we use tools from Salesforce, a couple of different tools, to take what we do as fundraisers and as people who volunteer to help out kids and to help out charities, and how to use that technology to make it an even better experience for us as people who are volunteering and for the folks who are enjoying the work that we do. Super excited.
And help the kids, too.
And help kids. Kids is important. But before we talk about all that, we got to talk about this forward-looking statement. You've probably seen it a couple of times. Let me summarize. Don't trust anything I say in terms of money. Please don't make financial decisions based on anything I say ever, but specifically on this stage. Probably you too, correct?
Yeah.
No financial decisions? Good. We all clear on that? Awesome. Let's talk about Fragforce. First of all, I want to talk about what Fragforce is. Now, Fragforce is a gaming charity. We are a charity group that raise money. We started off in Herndon, Virginia with a couple of people, and over the course of the last 4 years, we have grown to a massive, massive conglomerate. One of the things that we do is things like fundraising for something called Extra Life. For those folks who don't know what that is, when you were in grade school, you probably did something like Jump Rope for Heart, where you got to go to your parents and aunts and uncles and friends and family and say, hey, I'm going to jump rope for 6 hours. Make a donation to the American Heart Association, which is a great thing. We basically decided as adults that we wanted to do the same thing, but instead of doing something physical and good for you like jumping rope, we decided the best thing to do would be to play video games, because video games are awesome. Are
Yes,
they not?
they are.
They are. But
Very
it's
enjoyable.
good, and it's successful. Over the last 5 years, so far we've raised around $430,000. Over $200,000 of that was just raised in the last year alone. It's been a great accomplishment. We've raised for 3 different charities. We raised for Extra Life here in the States and in Canada, most of North America, which is an arm of Children's Miracle Network, raises money for local hospitals. In the UK, we raise money via Child's Play, and in Singapore, we actually raise money for local hospitals there. The KK Women's and Children's Hospital is an example. We have 14 sites across the globe right now. The sun almost never sets on Fragforce. We're getting there. I think we got a few more time zones to cover.
I think we got Australia, so we're pretty close.
Yeah, they're getting really close. But obviously, there's a lot of this. We have a lot of Salesforce employees. We have a lot of non-employees. But as we grow and we grow and we grow, and our goal for this year is $250,000, $250,000 for these charities, how are we going to scale up what we do? How are we going to accomplish that? And what we wanted to talk about here is some of the things that we're doing to do so. One of the things that we want to talk about specifically is how we use Salesforce tools to track donations across the world. We want to be able to take these donations and we want to be able to present them in a way that incentivizes the folks who are watching our Twitch streams. Hi, Twitch. Nice to see you. We want to have a simple progress display so that folks can, on our website, can see the sorts of donations we are getting. We want near real-time feedback as close as we can get. If someone donates while we're streaming a game, we want to be able to announce that. We want to be able to say, hey, you, thanks for donating that amount of money. We want to be able to engage with these people live, because that's a great way to work with these people. We want to be able to centralize different donation sources. With 3 different donation sources now and any number coming in the future, we want to be able to put all of those donations into a single bucket so that we can treat all of these donations fairly. And we want to be able to do this without doing things like taxing the APIs. The last thing, the folks at Extra Life want is us knocking on their API door every half second to pull data, because that would just be a waste of everyone's time and energy. Now, obviously, there are a lot of different ways we can do that. We wanted to start off at the very beginning with what we had inside our Salesforce org. We decided to use basically the standard rundown. We actually utilized the default account system as our team sites. The San Francisco office has a site. Herndon has a site. There's even a site for folks who aren't connected to a Salesforce office. Using that, then, we can automatically integrate in things like child records. We can integrate contacts for folks who donate, for folks who volunteer for us. There's a huge number of volunteers. Then we can set up events, things like our charity marathons, one that was a couple of weeks ago here in San Francisco, one that is the end of this week, actually, in Herndon, Virginia. All of these things are tracked in the org so that folks can do it. We can also engage who is participating. We can engage with who's coordinating, and all of those things are all right there in that org. And then we can utilize the external ID system to link that to an outside ID as well, such as a charity ID.
So there's a couple options here. So with a little bit of background first, really. So we have Heroku Connect. It offers a couple options for us for linking the org, the Salesforce org, and our Heroku-based databases. So you can do one-way or two-way syncs. Basically, that's like read-only or read-write. The other option is which side the metadata, the schema that is, comes from. So you can have org objects become Postgres tables, or Postgres tables can become org external objects. Now, there are restrictions with external objects, but, comes with the territory. So one other option in Heroku is you can limit what fields you sync. That is particularly useful for things like privacy and just controlling how much data you actually sync through.
Yeah, we're running a charity, not trying to collect everybody's personal information, obviously.
If you say so. So there's a couple options. There's also another option. You can control the sync cadence. You can have a simple time sync every 10 minutes or so. It'll force a sync. Or you can use a real-time sync, which uses the streaming API. So here we start out with Extra Life. We start pulling data via Extra Life's API and hopefully eventually Child's Play as well. And we dump all that data we get into a Postgres database in Heroku. We're also getting some data from the Salesforce org. That data is basically stuff like what users and groups do we want from the Extra Life API. So we don't pull Extra Life's entire database. We just pull part of it, the part we care about. All of that data then is analyzed via a set of queries. These ORM-based queries are fed into the web front end and the web API. These queries are heavily cached as well because we don't want to rerun these heavy-duty queries every time someone loads a page. It's a bad idea, right?
Yeah, wouldn't want to space the time.
So the web API also makes this data available to things like the stream overlay, which Ben will discuss in a little bit. Now, there are a couple advantages here. One is, since we have this all centralized in our database, we can allow multiple consumers, in other words, the web API users and the web front-end users, to all consume from our database while making only effectively one request or one set of requests to the Extra Life API. This makes it much, much easier on Extra Life's API servers and also simplifies the client code because they don't have to pull the raw data and analyze it.
Definitely.
So what was our solution? Fragforce ended up using a one-way sync from org objects to Postgres tables. We limit the mapped fields to just a small subset because, like I said earlier, security, privacy, those all come into play, and just, you don't want to load everything if you don't.
No reason to send everything over, just the stuff that's important.
Load does matter at certain volumes. So we also map almost all of these objects in real time. That means the streaming API is in use, except for the user object and maybe a couple more that you can't sync due to streaming API restrictions.
Of course.
So we also use Celery. That's an asynchronous task execution framework for Python. We use it for running all the stuff you don't want to run in the web server process. So long-running tasks, background jobs, cron jobs, who knows. One of these tasks runs and pulls data from the donor drive API. That's Extra Life's API backend. So it uses these REST calls, pulls down the data, stores it in Postgres via Django's ORM. From there, we use Heroku Connect, which pulls down the groups and users I mentioned earlier, and that were mentioned even before I mentioned them, and stores, I saw that, and stores them all in Postgres. That also is obviously used for limiting what we call to Extra Life's API. We then use shared ORM queries to analyze all this data. There's function decorators on all of these query functions that caches it optionally, and that helps database performance when you have a query that can take 2 to 5 seconds.
Yeah, definitely. And some of these, because a lot of this data gets queried in bulk when you're running these queries, you want to be sure that you reduce the time again to get it as close to real time as possible.
It also helps reduce the load over time impact.
Which is good.
Yep. So there are some problems with all these updates, caching, and so on. It does make some of the real-time things harder, like notifying participants that they've donated on stream. It's the result of caching plus the latency between pulls to the upstream vendor APIs. Our actual latency is around 5 to 10 minutes, usually on the lower side of that.
Yeah,
Okay?
definitely.
So here we have an example of a pie chart. This pie chart is not based on real data at the moment, sorry about that. It is something we show on our website, which has actual data, and it shows
yourself at fragforce.org.
It shows our fundraising progress for each of the charities we raise money for relative to our goal for the year. It is a JavaScript graph based on the library JS graph. We update the data for it every render, although in actuality, a template fragment cache caches the actual rendered HTML and JavaScript that gets passed in to generate it and passed on to the browser. It also, the queries themselves are also cached because we're actually wrapping all that in functions. So, Django stuff.
On top of that, obviously, we want to be able to do what I was saying before, the live engagement. Now, in order to do the live engagement, we actually can utilize the same queries along with a JavaScript API to pull all of this data real time on our streams. By utilizing URI components and things like that, we're able to create a system where we can JavaScript call from this database in a way that's configurable by the streamer before they start a stream, and then utilizing that data actually be able to present it live on a stream. What you're seeing here is a clip of my beautiful face. Isn't it lovely?
Body looks familiar.
I know, right? But it's that stream down on the bottom is a live stream of the most recent donations that have come into Fragforce, have come into the Extra Life. It utilizes the exact same caches and the template fragment caching as well as an internal JavaScript cache in order to absolutely maximize the timing while not causing any issues in terms of latency on the server, and again, minimizing that delay as much as possible.
So here we have some Django files. And the first one, we have urls.py. For those who don't program or use Django regularly, we have urls.py. It maps paths, URL paths, into view functions. So donations, which is actually /d/donations, as you'll see in a minute, maps to the vdonations function. This function, which has a cache page decorator to make sure the results of the page are cached for whatever number of seconds we set in the settings. First thing it does is it runs update donations if needed. This is a Celery task that, in this case, using .delay is fire and forget. That sends it off to a Celery worker via Redis, and that worker goes there and says, while the web server's off doing its own thing, says, well, how long has it been since I've last updated from Extra Life? If it's been more than a certain number of seconds or minutes, then it doesn't update. If it doesn't need to do anything, it just dies. It's done.
Goes and takes a nap.
Huh?
Takes a nap.
Well, the worker does.
Yeah, exactly.
The task dies.
No, yeah.
I mean, it has its own tombstone.
Well,
It's already terminated. So the next thing the vdonations function does is return data. It's returning JSON, a JSON response, as you can see. And it is returning a list of dictionaries. So we have donations model.objects. That is the Django model for all the donations that get loaded from Extra Life. We take all of them, order it by ID, dump it into values, and then, in a very unsafe way, return that list of dictionaries as JSON.
Indeed. And then utilizing that JSON, we can actually use this JavaScript model that I was talking about before. What you'll notice here is that we've got this URI here, which actually pulls items from the URL, such as record count, order by. You can actually return a certain number of records, a certain number of things like that, and creates that XML HTTP request. Utilizing that request, it's able to pull the JSON data and then filters it out into a system that allows you to build out that string. And then once you have that string built into the URL, it just populates a div tag with the contents of that string and sets it to scroll slowly across the screen. And then what you can do is you can go right into your OBS or any of whichever streaming system you want, enter that URL as you see there with that information, including the type and the number of donations, and it creates that stream that you can then position anywhere on that display, and now all of a sudden you've got a live display of these donations without having to deal with refreshing a page manually, so that you can focus on doing what you're doing in the stream, which is playing games, engaging with the audience, and trying to do the best you can to raise money for these kids.
Wait. It auto refreshes, but I like holding the F5 button down.
Well, I mean, if you just want to, if you want to sit there and slam F5, especially.
Oh no, you use like one of those little flippy birds, like Homer Simpson had.
Oh, with the
Yeah.
thing. That, I guess that would work as well, but you would refresh the entire page, and that would cause other issues.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, that's fine, but obviously this is just the beginning. We want to go further with this, so we have a lot of other options. Utilizing the same data, we could do things like integrating with Discord and Twitch bots to be able to thank donors in more ways, even automatically, which is great. I mean, in addition to the human component, having the system recognize that as well is really good. We also want to integrate more systems. We've got, obviously, all these examples are extra life. We want to be able to integrate with Child's Play's API, any other APIs that we happen to raise money for in the future. We want to be able to pull all that data. And then we also want to be able to pull that data from all of these database tables and push it back into the Salesforce org. To be able to do that, then we can report on these things, so we can show information. We can display this so that the folks who are volunteering can see at a detail level exactly what they're helping create by helping out with something like this. And then obviously we also want to be able to integrate into Social Studio. The folks at Fragforce and our community manager, Luthien, you're awesome, handle things like Twitch and handle our Twitter handle, but at the same time we want to be able to integrate into even more stuff. We want to be able to integrate into Facebook or into any other social media platform. Something like Social Studio would be able to do that. And on that, I think we're about done. I want to say to everybody here, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, we will most likely be hanging out over here, and then we'll be headed upstairs to the lunchroom area to sit down and chill and maybe eat some food.
It's straight upstairs over that way?
Yeah, it's in that direction over there, up the stairs.
Behind the security place, yeah.
Exactly, it should be fine. If you're interested in specifically what we do, you can check out fragforce.org. If you're interested in the charities that we work for, the one we talked about today was Extra Life. You can check out extra-life.org. And if you're just interested in watching us play games and act like complete fools on camera,
we do that a
lot. Go on ahead and go to twitch.tv/fragforce. There are folks streaming all the time. We've got streaming almost every day. I think we've got stuff happening even this evening. So I believe on that, we're about done. Thank you folks very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.